I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's a beautiful story about an amazing girl who wants to find the true self of hers. That is just so appealing and so special.
I was scared of the original cartoon. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once, and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years when I was doing this film.
You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
Hello, Poppets. Media Ghoul here. Snow White has just come out and, oh my, it's not having a good time of it. But if you've been paying attention to all the absolute disasters that have befell this ill-conceived project for the last few years, this would come as no surprise at all. Have I watched the film? No. Do I intend to? Absolutely not. So I won't be discussing or reviewing the movie itself, but instead going through some of the major issues this film has had since its announcement, starting with... Hi-ho! I don't know about you, but every time Disney, or any studio for that matter, announces a live-action remake of a classic or beloved animated film, I already know it will be utterly miserable. The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, Mulan, Aladdin, failure after creatively bankrupt failure. Animation lends itself well to fairy tales and stories like these. The amount of emotion and fluidity 2D animation can give to characters and environments is in another universe compared to the CGI sludge we get these days. This, of course, is no fault of the poor CGI artists trapped in a dungeon and paid pennies for their work, but more on the lack of planning and care that the suits have who make these decisions. And boy, these suits suck at their jobs. Let's be frank, Disney movies shouldn't be a gamble, right? They should be successful, at least financially, but the more effortless slop they put on the big screen, the more favour they lose from their core audience. Looking at the reviews for Snow White, it seems even those who rate their usual films highly can't bring themselves to give it even an average score. People would be a lot more forgiving if these were original IPs. However, it becomes a personal insult to fans when these remakes keep being spewed out. There's a reason the originals were successful and popular. Why change anything? Ah, of course. We have to make radical changes to the plot and characters so it can be consumed by this mystical modern audience I always hear about. Yet, people still watch the originals. Year after year, decade after decade, more and more people watch these timeless classics because they are, timeless. Good 2D animation can last forever. The Snow White remake is already dated and it's just come out. In fact, I can guarantee you, over the next few years, more people will watch the original Snow White for the first time than will watch this remake in total. We see time and time again these modern spins on classical tales fall flat on their face. It just doesn't appeal to the mass general audience most of the time. The more times Disney roll the dice on this, the more chances they have to fail. And failing means wasting tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, which could have gone to financing a large number of smaller projects, instead of going all in on one big project as these studios seem to be addicted to doing. The main actors in any movie act as the face of said project. Part of the job is going around promoting the film through interviews, social media, etc. A professional understands that you're speaking directly to the target audience when promoting a project, which Rachel certainly tried to do. Yes, well, all the things she said is incredibly cringe. We must also understand that they believe they are making this movie for this magical modern audience that doesn't exist. Frankly, this is exactly what this particular audience would want to hear. A classic piece of art painted with a modern brush. So, look, we can't exactly be overly shocked she would say the things that she said. The reality, however, is the general audience doesn't respond well to what some may look as injecting current political ideals into an old, cherished story. Snow White fans are fans of the original story and characters for a reason. Classic animation fans are fans for the revolutionary work Disney and the original team achieved. Parents want to take their kids to movies they can trust will have appropriate lessons for their children and family values. The more a main actor talks about their ideals and ideology, the more chances you run with alienating a large part of your audience. This, of course, goes both ways, but part of being a professional in this environment for this sized project is putting all of that aside and focused on ensuring you build hype and the largest audience possible. Rachel, unfortunately, assumed the modern audience is much larger than it actually is, so the blowback was so intense they had to delay the film multiple times, causing lower and lower interest in the movie. Her opinions on American politics and her vain claim that people would line up to see her is a bit cringe, of course, but she is playing into her fan base, which is understandable, but absolutely unprofessional. If you want to lose money on your film the producer's style, you can learn a lot from Rachel Zegler's school of tanking massive properties. Are you paying attention, Marvel?
Hi-ho, it's home from work we go.
We all remember the diversity dwarves, right? It wasn't even outrageous, it was just hilarious. So hilarious that Disney delayed the film so they could replace the actors with CGI monstrosities that are more terrifying than anything the evil queen ends up doing. It all started with good old Peter Dinklage saying that casting actual dwarves or little people in these roles would be demeaning and offensive. What? Giving actors that fit the role perfectly the opportunity to work in a massive Disney project would be bad? Okay, bet, Disney said, going on to hire the average group found in a Portland coffee shop. Once the casting pictures hit the internet, however, Disney executives couldn't do anything without hearing the howls of laughter from half the world. So, they reneged and covered them up with CGI goop. How... Oh, how terrible. I honestly feel bad for some of these actors. They didn't do anything wrong. The casting directors and producers, however, well, hope all that virtue you garnered was worth costing the company millions in CGI and the poor dungeon dwellers dozens of sleepless weeks to slap it all together. Gah, what idiots. I don't think it's a shock to anyone when I say the 2D environments made in the 1930s look infinitely better than any green screen work or CGI this team were forced to put together. They spent more, made it look worse, and it won't even come close to making as much. Par for the course when it comes to Disney these days, huh?
Hi-ho, 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 hi-ho.
Out of terror that Rachel would say something absolutely brain dead, again, Disney opted to have a very small, invite-only premiere instead of the usual red carpet affair. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when the company producing a film doesn't have faith in its stars, well, star power, then why on earth should I? It begs the question, though, right? Is the movie being panned by critics because they didn't get to go to a fancy event with the stars and be wined and dined for a decent score? Is that what it takes for these so-called critics to become shills? And when they don't get it, they give an honest rating? Oh, gee willikers, sad times, y'all. Not even Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb are wanting to remove these negative scores, which, I'll admit, makes for a nice change.
Hi-ho, it's home from work we go.
I, look, obviously don't want to spend too much time on this particular topic, as it deals with some very real and tragic stuff, but the reality is the current conflict in the Middle East is constantly on many people's minds, and we have this movie with the two main stars, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, both very vocal supporters of different sides of this terrible situation. It pains me to say it, but in today's climate, a large portion of your potential audience may very well refuse to watch and support your project due to something like this. Having someone on each side alienates and puts off supporters of both sides, making it an even harder task to get people to the theatre. Of course, I wish this wasn't the case, but it is an understandable reality for many people. It's just a silly little kids movie, you know? Oh, why do you care? Well, I may be not a big Snow White fan, but I am a big fan of animation. Snow White was a gamble for Disney. He put everything he had into this film, quite literally, needing to borrow more from the bank to get it finished. Its budget bloated out to over $1 million in the 1930s for an animated movie. Insane. I can't even imagine the film landscape without something as pivotal and revolutionary as Snow White, proving that people will absolutely watch long-form animation, inspiring countless creatives for future generations. Many animation techniques and styles were created and perfected for this film, things that are still utilized to this day in 2D and even 3D animation, many of which we actually just take for granted. Yes, it's a kids' movie, but children deserve quality just as much as everybody else. They're impressionable, so good stories with simple but important lessons are frankly far more important than the media we consume as adults. For this reason, many parents are very cautious with the media they let their kids consume. Sure, there are plenty of parents who couldn't care less about what their kids watch, but plenty more that do. Used to be, a parent could have the trust and faith that a new Disney animated film would absolutely be fine for their kids to watch. Disney built that reputation, starting with a film like Snow White. However, in the last decade or so, that reputation has soured. Look, Snow White was doomed at the beginning. Not a single piece of information that came out about the production gave me any faith that the movie would even be half decent. These days, though, Disney producing a good movie is more of a surprise than them producing a flop, so this shouldn't really be news to anybody. You have two main actors that can't act. You rely on auto-tune for everyone because they can't sing. You throw any magic or whimsy from the original and replace it with CGI sludge. You disrespect the original story, characters, and meaning. You alienate every possible target audience you can think of. Seems like these have become checkboxes for these horrendous live-action remakes. Gods. Don't pay to see this nonsense. Watch the original instead and be reminded of what filmmaking and animation used to mean. And look, I hope you enjoyed the video, bit of a quick one, but make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to support the channel, consider becoming a member to get a shout out at the end of each video. Ha! Till next time.